flooding.
The death toll from flooding.
Most time our politicians just bring in policies too, for sure.
Incidentally, we have several more stories.
The legislature was carefully crafted to
22.2% inflation rates as of April this year. What does that say about where we are as a country?
I think Nigeria has resorted to being resilient.
Before you call a police station, before they even leave, they'll take permission from
I don't think there's really anything on ground to improve.
the struggle with ASU strike.
The Minister of Education volunteered and said, give me 2 weeks.
It was a lie. The president never gave me any deadline.
Well, thank you everyone for staying with us here on Global Television. It's a great Monday, first working day of the week, and it's a delight to always be here with you. This morning, one of the things we want to do on the program is take a look at some of the big events, highlights from last week, especially within the political space. It's interesting how that Nigeria has been redefined in a manner of speaking on account of the last round of elections of 2023, particularly the ones across the states. In the last couple of weeks, we've seen how courts after courts have sacked governors, majority of whom are from the opposition parties. And these incidences have raised concerns as to whether or not Nigeria has made progress with regards to democratic experience. And then, of course, how much more work we will have to do to galvanize this democracy that we started in 1999. More than ever before, the judiciary has come under intense attack on account of these judgments, especially as it has to do with the ones delivered by the Court of Appeal. Just this weekend, we understood that there was supposed to be a protest. In fact, the 2 protests had been scheduled to take place in Kano, one by the supporters of the NNPP and the other supporters of the APC. But good thing is those protests were halted, given the security implications that they held. However, Kano has not remained the same because supporters of the APC and those behind the NNPP have continually clashed between themselves, because they say, for those who support the NNPP, that Governor Abba Yusuf goes nowhere, that he won the election, that Kano State deserves to have him as a governor. However, the people on the side of the APC say that judiciary is the final arbiter, judiciary has spoken, and so be it. While we understand that Governor Abba Yusuf and his New Nigeria People's Party, the NNPP, have the option of escalating to the Supreme Court, it will appear the political tension in that state has changed for the most part. Kano, as we have known it the whole time. But it's not Kano alone. You turn to a place like even Plateau, you see almost the same scenario playing out. We understand that when the governor, Caleb Mofwang, who has also been sacked by the courts, showed up on Friday, he received a rousing welcome. However, that has not changed the fact that Plateau State also has experienced its own share of tension. In Kogi, where we have seen one of 3 off-cycle elections, talking about Kogi, Bayelsa, and Imo, you realize that even the tribunal, the governorship election petitions tribunal in the state, has now given INEC 48 hours, starting from yesterday, to furnish the SDP, that's the Social Democratic Party, and its candidate, Murtala Ajaka, with all the necessary items that they've asked for, including information from the beavers, so that they're able to pursue their case. And we understand that one of the things, or part of the requests that the SDP and its candidates, Ajaka, have made, 1, to have access to beavers information, 2, to have results sheets from certain local governments, over half a dozen of them, including Okene and, of course, Ajaokuta. What does this say about how elections are conducted in this country? Because now we're talking about the judiciary, because elections are found to be faulty, the processes are considered broken. So most of these election outcomes end up in front of judges. But then that's the conversation we'd like to have on the show this morning. And then, as always, we'll take a look at the papers for you. All of that will happen right after this break. To stay with us. Let's begin to look at the papers for you. We begin with the Punch newspaper this morning. The Punch, like other papers, has several stories right on the front page of it. We're also going to look at other papers for you. But let's begin with the Punch newspaper. Big story on the front of the Punch this morning. It says mega banks boast 10 trillion naira capital base. Others seek fresh investors. It's talking about bank consolidation. All right, we understand that the CBN has moved to consolidate banks. Remember, this whole consolidation essentially started in 2004 under former CBN governor Charles Soludo, who is now the governor of Anambra State. So we've had recapitalization, or if you like, consolidation, time and again since that time, including under former CBN governor Lamido Sanusi. But again, the point with all of this is the CBN this time, under the leadership of Dr. Olayemi Kadoso, says that this is part of the idea towards the $1 trillion economy being projected and pursued by the government of President Bola Tinubu within the framework of the Renewed Hope agenda. Okay, so we look at stories above the nameplates of today's Punch newspaper. Let's see that for you. One story here with a picture of the embattled governor of Deputy Governor of Edo State, Comrade Philip Shaibu. It says governorship bid, hotel cancels Obaseki deputy's venue booking. That's a bit of a crisis because story says that the venue had already been booked by Philip Shaibu and his team for the purpose of formally announcing his bid for the Osadebe Government House come 2024. However, some Obaseki Finishing Well group also announced that they are using the same venue on the same day. All right, so it leaves the deputy governor, who knows, perhaps with the option of having to seek an alternative. But again, this is apparently a fallout of the tussle that has ensued between the governor and his one-time sweetheart, for want of better words, Deputy Governor Comrade Shaibu. Recall the love that was, some say is seeming love that the governor and the deputy had between 2019 and 2020, especially going into the election that handed Governor Obaseki his second term. But some people had also said at that time, look, this is just a flash in the pan, because in the long term, Deputy Governor Philip Shaibu would want to run for governor. And the problem with that is the governor, talking about his principal, Obaseki, may not anoint him, as they say, to take up the mantle after him. As of today, we have some information saying that Aswe Godalo himself, an erudite businessman, successful entrepreneur, and of course, a champion when it comes to a boardroom, is the one Obaseki has tapped to succeed him. Others have also said, well, he's the immediate past speaker of the House of Assembly, talking about Marcus Audible, who currently holds the seats at the House of Representatives. But whatever the case may be, the indications are that the governor, as it stands right now, wants to get somebody from Edo Central, which is the Esan-dominated part of the state, to succeed him. However, the challenge is with that, from what we've seen, is there are also influential voices within the Esan space who have said, you have not chosen the person that we want to represent us. You can't choose an Esan man for us. We've got to be the ones to determine who that Esan man should be. In the final analysis, the deputy governor himself is from Edo North, all right? Oshomole, the immediate past governor, I mean, the person who the predecessor to Obaseki, is from Edo North. So there are people across the state who say, for the sake of equity, for the sake of fairness and justice, the next governor, starting from 2024, November 12 precisely, has got to come from Edo Central, which has to be from amongst the Esan-speaking people. So that's where Edo State is at the moment. But the highlights of this development is the supremacy battle, I mean, if you don't mind, between the governor and his deputies. So we see where that leads. However, like they say, when two elephants fight, the grass does suffer. In this case, for want of better words, the grass refers, in a manner of speaking, to the people of the state, a state of, as we hear, about 5 million people. So the governor and his deputy have got to realize that the state does not revolve around them. If anything, and those state people expect the governor to provide leadership in such a way that the people are not in any form of disadvantage now or later. Okay, but we're still looking at the Punch with headlines above the nameplate. The second one there says, let's see, companies raise salaries by 4.6 trillion naira in 6 months. That's according to the National Bureau of Statistics. You can read up those details on page 32 of today's issue of the Punch newspaper. Okay, and then you have another headline there that says on page 2 this time, though, it says lecturers shortage hits varsities. ASU blames Jakba IPPIS. Hopefully we can have that on the screen now. We're looking at the Punch newspaper for you this morning. Okay, but let's turn from the Punch newspaper now and take a look at the Tribune, the Nigeria Tribune. Okay, big story still on the front page of the Nigerian Tribune. Why CBN governor is right on bank recapitalization. Experts say inflation, naira depreciation, weakening capital adequacy of banks, want national, regional, international banks to coexist. And then above the nameplates, Petroleum Minister weighs into LPG supply price hike challenges. Obaseki, deputy, said for showdown, fix event for same venue. Apparently that story is replicated across news dailies this morning. Multiple bank charges amid rising inflation worry Nigerians. And then if you look at the left end, that's the front page of today's Tribune. ECOWAS condemns attempted coup in Sierra Leone. Suspense in Plateau over moves to inaugurate assembly. We have surpassed our first year good governance targets. Adeleke, that's Osun State Governor speaking. Details of that story await you on page 23. Let's see, we'll have that. Page 31, I should say, of the Tribune today. And the LEA nabs organizers of Osun illicit drug party tagged unholy alliance. Wonders they say shall never end, on page 26 of the Tribune newspaper. All right, NJC panel meets tomorrow to pick 11 new Supreme Court justices. Ex-CJN Kotigi's son, Biru Somani, others on FJSC priority lists are favored. Okay, we should also take a look at The Guardian for you real quick. Let's see what The Guardian has got for us this morning. It says banks brace for new monetary policy conduct regulation. Page 6 of The Guardian newspaper has some infographics on the front page, as is always the case with The Guardian, and then the picture of CBN Governor Cardoso. Okay, banks brace for new monetary policy conduct regulation as Cardoso returns CBN to traditional monetary policy regime. Okay, new framework for payment service policies, monetary tightening to continue to second quarter. That's Q2 2024. New capital base for Nigerian banks, new FX guidelines, and legislations. Okay, but in all, whatever we do, the issue of round tripping with regards to foreign exchange markets is something that needs to be addressed like yesterday morning, amongst other policies that should either be introduced or reviewed. Okay, Coos Care, Sierra Leone declares curfew as ECOWAS condemns plots. Guba aftershocks, Kogi queries Monarch as APC gives Kano AG ultimatum. NBS, imperative of creating stronger, vibrant data system. Women lawyers canvass castration of rapists. That call has been a long time coming, but isn't that on the extreme for punitive measure? Okay, Serap urges World Bank to suspend loans to states. Is that realistic? Will the World Bank listen? Are states learning their lesson? Are states becoming more fiscally responsible? The judiciary and Justice Datijo Muhammad's concern. These are big stories from today's Guardian, but we have Daily Trust as well. Okay, the Daily Trust has quite a number of stories this morning where we're just going to look at the big ones on the front page. We have a special report on the so-called one chance phenomenon for you in a bit, but let's look at the headlines first from Daily Trust newspaper. Just beneath the nameplates, it says Wike Fubara feud continues to put Rivers on edge. Father and son, they call themselves, but it will appear no love lost between both parents and child at this point. Consider economic indices before banks recapitalization, experts tell CBN. Confusion as Lagos-Abuja flights diverted over weather. Of course, NIMET has been warning for a bunch of weeks now about weather and the aviation sector. 5.6 billion naira wheat project scam. Ex-Nestle boss arrested 11 months after sacking. Nabbed lobbying for reappointments. Bolts away 32 official vehicles. No comments. DSS. FG raises committee to crash cooking gas price. How soon will that happen? Tinubu pledges full and university autonomy. Catholic priest remanded for impregnating teenager in Anambra. ECOWAS court orders amendments of Nigeria Press Council Acts. All right, we'll take a look at a few more papers for you in the course of the show this morning. But real quick, let's talk about security situation in the FCT, especially as it has to do with the one chance phenomenon. Our partner correspondent, Abdullahi Danjuma, did a very brilliant work with this one.
An apparently peaceful traffic situation can turn into a nightmarish experience with the activities of the popular but ignoble criminals called One Chance. They are violent criminals who disguise as either commercial drivers or as passengers. The trick is to shout, one chance, giving the impression that the vehicle needs only one passenger to move. But jump in, and you jump into a pile of miseries. Kabiru Adamu is a security consultant and confirms that this pattern of crime has taken an alarming dimension.
It is a common occurrence in most city centers. In Abuja, as an example, it's very difficult for you to go to any space where there are a couple of persons ranging from 3 up until 10 that you will not find at least 1 to 2 to 3 persons that have not been victims of one chance, as long as the persons are using commercial vehicles.
So I entered the cab, hailing Papi.
Chidinma is a young mother. She had a terrible and pathetic experience in the hands of the criminals. Chidinma was dropped by her sister right about here at around 8 o'clock in the evening. A Mazda car driven by a man and one other passenger at the back pulled over and hastily picked her. Destination, Mpape. But the journey was doomed because a set of horrible things started happening at the inception of the trip.
Merely I entered. The passenger by my left, was behaving as if he was collecting his balance from the driver. So I felt comfortable. I guess they did that so that I wouldn't have to notice what was going to go on. So immediately after he collected that balance, the next thing he did was to stretch his hands towards my side, and here was on my neck, while here was trying to stop me from opening the door by my right. So as I tried to open the door by my right, they were shouting, you better cooperate. You know, go cooperate, but you won't die. You won't die this night. She said, go feel come out from this car. This is go feel come out from this car. They were beating me. The first person that hit me was the man in front. So he punched me with, I don't know whether it was a ring on his finger or a rod. Mainly he punched me. That was when here, the blood started oozing from here. So I was in the pool drinking my blood. Then they now told me, lie down. Okay, lie down. No, go lie down, ba. So I was struggling. They've collected my stuffs. They've collected my bags at that time. I didn't have my bag with me. So they were telling me, no, go lie down, ba. So I thought they wanted to rape me as they were telling me to lie down on the floor of the car. So as I tried to lie down on that floor, the one by my side too now slapped me, and he tried to strangle me too. That was where this marks came out from. So he was strangling me. I was telling me, no, you go die this night. Maybe you don't want to cooperate. You go die this night. You go die this night.
Chidinma was lucky to escape alive because she did not fit the correct profile of the perfect victim the criminals were searching for their sinister intentions.
By the time they were done beating me, it wasn't like, the madam, you know what you go do now? You go cut your breast. I said, okay, sir. He now said, do you have kids? I said, yes, I have kids. He just kept quiet. The next thing I saw was that he told me, okay, oh yeah, get up.
Alone in the night.
This young lady was also lucky because she survived and agreed to share her experience with us.
I've been attacked in this beggar before. I was hit from behind. My phones and everything were collected. And it took me years to be able to stand in beggar and get a car and pick up a cab.
In a daring display of impunity, most of the criminals move around with POS machines for ease of stealing money out of the bank accounts of their victims. Security experts explain that this is very possible, especially with the emergence of new financial outfits who ignore the vigorous security check on customers before opening customer accounts.
A lot of the instances that we've monitored, they actually use the financial systems. Now, the reason for this is commonplace. Number one, we do not have a national database for individuals, Nigerians actually. And more importantly, even the banking system has not put in place infrastructure to reduce the possibility of this from happening. And then secondly, where it happens, to trace the perpetrators, arrest them, and then prevent further crime.
Abuja is Nigeria's seat of government. It is also a bubbling cosmopolitan city that attracts people from every part of Nigeria and even abroad who come mostly in search of economic opportunities. But like many emerging cities facing the challenges of growth, crime has become a major issue. The June 2023 edition of Nigeria Security Report for Beacon Intel, a security consulting firm, shows an increase in crime in not just Abuja but other major Nigerian cities. The FCT Police Command says it is doing its best to fight crime in the territory in order to protect the security and welfare of citizens.
We have created a tactical squad called Anti-One Chance, which they have been charged with the responsibility of these one chance activities to wipe away, in conjunction with the DPOs as well. The DPOs are doing on the divisional level, and this squad that I mentioned, Anti-One Chance, has been deployed also to each division.
The FCT Police Public Relations Officer says the police needs the cooperation of the victims and other citizens in order to tackle this despicable crime called One Chance.
Sometimes these modus, they change their modus, though we've identified the modus they are using. But when they know we identify them, they also change their modus. So when if you find yourself as a victim, it's only wise and advisable that you report these incidences to the security agencies.
I actually did not believe that they could do anything about it. That was why I didn't report to them.
There are law enforcement agents that do not see this crime as a major crime. We've been in instances where we've monitored this development on behalf of our clients. We will report the cases by providing the telephone numbers that were used in the crime, the account numbers that were used in the crime. The response you get from the law enforcement is that they have bigger challenges. And this is the effort they will use in stopping this is not what the benefit.
Victims survive and injuries are treated, but the emotional scar takes a very long time to heal.
It took me months or if not years to actually recover. And psychologically, everything around me now, even if I enter a cab now, I will start to be conscious of where I am because of everybody around me is a suspect.
The one that was repeatedly beating me, I didn't see the one on the front, his face, but the one at the back, I kind of saw his face. So when I see someone that looks like that person, I'll be like, are you sure it's not this man that beat me that night?
Kabiru Adamu says commuters should avoid flagging vehicles along the road. Instead, approved and designated motor parks should be used. Anjum Abdullahi.
Thank you, Danjuma Abdullahi, for that very incisive and in-depth reports in there on the one chance phenomenon. We understand that there's an expansion of this syndicate now with even kidnapping being introduced into the FCT gradually. These are some of the insidious moves being made by criminal gangs just to distort the peace that the nation enjoys, especially at the center. We believe that law enforcement agencies are on top of their game in this regard. Global Television will continue to track progress for you and report these developments as it unfolds. In the meantime, we turn to the discussion right in front of us, which has to do with this series of verdicts, judgments, if you like, that we've seen coming out of courts, whether it's the Election Petitions Tribunal or the Appeal Courts. One that is being awaited now is to see the outcome of the matters in front of the Supreme Court with regards to all of the cases, especially as they have to do with gubernatorial elections arising from the 2023 general election cycle. My guest this morning is Dr. Yahuza Getso, a security intelligence and investigation expert. He's also a research expert, a consultant on research and development. Thank you, Getso, for coming on the program.
Thank you for having me. Thank you, viewers.
Excellent. I'm sure that you have also been very concerned with regards to development across the country as it has to do with elections and the outcomes of these elections. What have been your thoughts, quite frankly?
Well, actually, it has been quite disheartening and disgracing and embarrassing. It's kind of a display or exhibition of our own judicial system as a system that has been radicalized or has been characterized by either corruption or a lot of fishy or a lot of questions.
But those are the allegations out there in public. It will appear members of the public expect the judiciary to be emotional. So if your party or your favorite candidate does not win an election, judiciary becomes corrupt. Is that where we are?
The election process in Nigeria is becoming something that you have to struggle with electorates during the campaign, and then struggle with security and other agencies as the polling units and the INEC itself. And then at the same time, after INEC been announced that you have won the election, you also have to go to court to win the election. This is really making it very difficult. And really it's not really healthy. It's not going to be healthy for the future of electoral process in the country. There are doctrines and there are principles by which INEC set aside as a guidelines for winning election or losing election. But fortunately and unfortunately, most of the electoral officers, even at the local government level, at the polling unit level, most of the presiding officers, when you try to refer them to some of these elements in the manual that they have it in their own pack, given by issued by the INEC, you find it they will start arguing because they don't really know. So it means there is issue of quality of the training itself, and the quality of the personnel themselves, and the quality of the electoral officers who are the permanent. You can say that the presiding officers are ad hoc staff, but the electoral officers of the local government, most of them are permanent staff of the INEC that have been working with INEC over time. They're supposed to have all these documents summarized in their brain, so they can easily always respond to those who may be asking questions about it. So now when we come to what has been happening in the courts, it's really, Court of Appeal is expected to kind of deal with issues from the districts and other designated courts. But fortunately and unfortunately, parties are losing, when I say parties, I mean the stakeholders, are losing confidence. And not only the stakeholders, even the public, the Nigerian populace, are really losing confidence and trust on them. If at all, there should be a conditions governing who will be a judge.
Right.
A judge at the Court of Appeal is not like a judge at the bench at the lower court. Because
say the High Court, for example.
Of course, the High Court or even the magistrate, assuming, or the tribunal. You cannot just be appointed as a member of the tribunal judges team without having an experience, without conducting a background checks on who you are, and without taking the process of going through the school of law, either the university level 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and then you will go to the certifying institutions.
Are you insinuating that some of the judges may not be eligible to hold the positions that they hold?
Well, they are.
The NJC, of course, will not come to tell you what their modus operandi is, because they would have done their own due diligence before these gentlemen and women are appointed.
But notwithstanding what we are seeing now, what we have been experiencing in the election of the 2011, 2015, 2019, and the outcome of the judgments, the recent judgment, especially that of Nasarawa, Kano, Filato, and others, is really confusing. It's making it difficult for anybody to understand that what is really the faces. And is there any code of conduct or ethic, or are they losing the values, or are they keeping it aside and then probably compromising with the politicians or those who have been probably facilitating in the kind of prosecution of the system itself?
In the case of Kano, the appeal court says there was a clerical error. Did you buy that, or were you convinced about that?
Well,
I mean, they are humans before they are judges.
I cannot be convinced. Yes, of course, they are human. But remember, for you to be a judge, you must be honest, you must be sincere, you must be sensible, you must be responsible, you must be educated, and you must be go through a certain process. And those process, the judgment is just one page, and it contains only 5 paragraphs. And within those paragraphs, remember, before you affect your signature, how many times you as a journalist, can you just come and report information without verifying it? Can you just come and sign an information and send it on behalf of your media outlet without verifying? You should think of the implication of that. Not talk of the justice as the level of Court of Appeal. Somebody to come and say that a clerk brought a paper to you, you just look at the paper and take a pen. And remember, there are 3 things that are very confidential and very difficult to manage by any lawyer. And they manage it with very high sensitivity. 1, their signature. They don't ever want anybody to see when they are signing whatever document. 2, the stamp. And 3, the document itself. They always value the quality and the quality and the qualification of the document they are releasing. So how comes the Court of Appeal release such a document with a signature affected by the judge, and also he used his pen and also stamped? And the second document that came, which they said that there was a mistake, the second document that comes out, there is no date and no signature. Or even if there is signature, there is no stamp on it. So which one do we take? If you say that there are errors, how comes you are at that level? Are we not slapping ourselves at the internet to the international community, saying that we are not really responsible? Because if you don't have a responsible judicial system within the cycle of the governance, within the cycle of an institution, within the whole Court of Appeal, if there is issue, let's take back even the tribunal itself, that judges said that those who are wearing red cap, they are bandits and terrorists. You cannot qualify somebody just because he wears red cap. As far as I'm concerned, you call that person a terrorist, you call person, and you sign, you affected is the signature on it. You made this statement. How can you qualify somebody? As a security expert, I know what it means for you to call somebody bandits. I know what it means for you to call somebody a terrorist. How do you qualify, and how do you quantify, and what measurable indicator do you use to certify that this person is really a criminal? And you say anybody who is wearing a red cap in Kano, it means that you are referring even the traditional institutions, the religious leaders, because most of the scholars in Kano are using red cap. Most of the traditional institutions, right from the white head to the emirs, all of them are using red cap. So when you make such reference, you are abusing the whole people of Kano State, not only the members of the All Progressive New Nigeria People's Party. So having that from the tribunal, which means the judgment was made a kind of, they were provocative emotions, which is really wrong. And then we see this happening also at the appeal court. And then when an alarm was raised, please return back. I am waiting. I'm not really a legal unit, but I am waiting to all the explanations that have been passed by Femi Palana and other
senior lawyers.
Senior lawyers.
Right.
They have really crucified the judgment from the Court of Appeal.
But those are opinions. Those are statements from the court. Yes, we're going to get to that. But in the meantime, how do you assess the explanation by some people that Kano State is if you like, a pawn between Ganduje, the former governor of the state, and of course his former principal, Engineer Rabiu Kwankwaso, that this fight is between both gentlemen, is not about the governor and the candidates of the People's of the APC.
I think there is a certification to this. Why? Because the sitting governor, that is Engineer Abba Kabir Yusuf, made mention recently, I think yesterday or day before yesterday, because he has not disputed it yet, and it's going around viral, that he was contacted, that if he is ready to disappoint his principal, that is Rabi Musa Kwankwaso, and join All Progressive Party, they are going to allow him to continue. They are going to allow him to continue to be the governor of the state. So, which means
if he defects,
if he is ready to defect, they are going to allow him to continue as a governor of Kano State. But he said that he made a public statement, and this public statement is in almost all the print and electronic media, and as well as the social media, and it has not yet been disputed. Up to this morning, I've been following up on it to see if there is any counter statement from the I tried also to reach out to his press secretary as well as the Commissioner of Information to confirm, even though they have not responded to my calls, but notwithstanding, I had expected if it was wrongly asserted or linked to the governor, definitely, because it is always in court wherever I saw it, and his picture was there, very clear. So it is very clear that it is just a struggle. They wanted just to have Kano as one of the states where you will have off-cycle election. So that could be an opportunity to take it off from any of the opposition party. But it is very clear. Even yesterday, there was a protest by a women group of the NNPP to the police headquarters and other places, even though the police authority have asked all the protests to stop. But however, it is very clear, because the confusion created by the appeal court and what is happening is very, very clear, that it is just a kind of struggle of power between the Abdullahi Ganduje as well as the Kwankwaso. But the electorate have elected Abba Kabir Yusuf, whether you like it or not, whether anybody like it or not, because it is very clear. Even though those error from INEC, from 160 something votes that have not been stamped, cannot it indicates still that the people of Kano State are really interested, or they have really elected, because the gap between Gawuna and that of Abba Kabir Yusuf is really huge, about 160 something.
But the basis on which the APC and its candidates, Dr. Gawuna, are challenging the election of Abba Yusuf is different. They are saying that he was not duly selected. They're talking about the internal politics of his party, the primary election leading into the election proper.
Well, I think in this regard, we have to also refer to the judgment made in the case of the president himself, the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu.
Right.
Because there was some of these allegations that he was not duly. There was almost the same criteria. So why is it reversed in the case of Abba Yusuf, and it has not been attended or listed by law or by any court in the case of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu? So this is really kind of giving a two-way confusion, because it's like you have two hands. If you turn it this way, it's still the same thing. If you turn it this way, it's still the same thing. But if you say no, when you turn it this way, is the back, and then when you do it this way, it's not the back. So as far as I'm concerned, the process, either the INEC made the mistake somewhere else, because how comes it passes all the process for him to become as a certified contender and given a certificate, or also for the election to take process, and also to be awarded a certificate of return without any in either petition from the opposition party or even within the party? Because he was not only the contender for NNPP, there were other contenders, and there wasn't any petition. And even if there was any petition, does that mean that INEC doesn't have a legal system or a legal department, or what have their legal department been doing? They were unable to look inward and double check and ensure that yes, he even for him before they even allow him to be certified to be among the contenders and have him on the ballot paper and all other informations.
Let's talk about two other states that are of interest too. This time Plateau and Nasarawa, which is just our neighbor here, by the way. Talk to me about what makes these two states different from Kano in terms of this judgment of the appeal courts.
Well, one of the reasons is the fact that, these were issues of internal party.
In the case of Nasarawa?
In the case of Kano.
Of Kano, okay.
Yeah, because you said that he is not duly been checked, nominated by the party. So that is one. The issue of Nasarawa State is a difference. It's a case of a number of votes. And in the case of Plateau, it's also the case of internal party, internal issues within the party also. At the same time, also the issue of a number of votes, and then some other argument in some of the few local governments.
It's interesting how that we keep talking about the court and verdicts and judgments after elections are over. One would have thought that as soon as INEC, we should be at a point right now in our democratic history such that once INEC announces winners, then there's closure to elections. But we have not seen that. Look at Kogi now. We're hearing that, of course, the Election Petitions Tribunal is already cracking very seriously in that state. In fact, they've given INEC 48 hours now to furnish the candidate of the SDP and the party with certain critical elements. But that's a story for much later on the show. But in the meantime, let's talk about INEC. Every time we talk about anomalies with our electoral process, we blame it on INEC. Can INEC continue to become the god in terms of expectations that Nigerians have?
Well, there are 3 to 5 things. One, INEC have not displayed a credibility on its own. Because over time, there have been kind of repetitive actions and inactions, and inability to follow the due diligence, which really pose a big question of their credibility. And 2, there are a lot of questions of compromises in many circumstances. Remember in Kogi, there was even a local government whereby election results was ready before even the conduct of the election. So, and during the FCT area council election, there was also so many issues with bypass. So, and with the BFAS, the machine.
Yes.
And then also most of the, even during the 2023 election, there were a lot of negligence and kind of either internal sabotage, which have not been able to attend by the leadership of the INEC. And if you look at most of these cases, it's kind of putting question on the reputation of the leadership of the INEC, because they have not been able to convince Nigerians that yes, we know our job and we are doing our job. And number 5, as far as federal government, as far as the leading party continue to be on power, and then continue to also be the one that is the president continue to pay the budget, to pay the money, to release the funds, to fund INEC, we will never get a credible election.
So what should be the solution to that?
Well, there should be other source.
So should we have to take a second look at the law in such a way that the president does not have the latitude to appoint INEC chairman?
Absolutely. There should be. That has been the advocacy and the clarion call.
But is that realistic?
Sorry?
Is that realistic? Is it possible?
It is. Indeed it is. Because it happens in many other countries. So why in Nigeria? If it happens in other places, why can't we try it? It's a matter of the National Assembly to make adjustment on the law, so that another source of funding, INEC can find another way of mobilizing the resources without being endorsed or being going through the budget process and the defense and whatever. Because it will be very, very difficult. If I will be the president and I need my party, or I will be the governor, and you expect fuel from me, you expect personnel from me, you expect funding for...
But it's not the president's personal money, it's the country's taxpayers' money.
Of course. But because who is appointing the leadership of the INEC?
So what, in practical terms, what kind of mechanisms, call it a legislative framework or anything, that we can evolve in such a way that we bypass this process very legally of the president being the one to appoint INEC chairman? Because people have said we can have a system where it runs pretty much like the civil service. Will that also serve the purpose? Because there's so much of evolution going on in electoral systems across the world. We say we practice the American form of presidential system and democracy and what have you. What part of the American democratic and presidential systems are we leaving behind?
Well, you know, having the system is different. Operating the system is different.
So we have a problem with operation of the system?
Yes, of course. We have a very perfect system. Even though it may not be perfect, it may be near perfect. And when you conduct it, when you implement it, when you have a system and you try to operate it, it fails. You try to operate it for the second time, it fails. Third time, it fails. Fourth time, it failed. Fifth time, it failed. You should ask yourself, why can't you go and revisit that system and double check? Definitely there must be a crack here and there. Definitely there must be a loopholes. Definitely there must be one weakness or the other. So how do you conduct now a SWOT analysis? You understand your strength, you understand your weakness, you understand your opportunities, and you understand the threat. So the National Assembly and all other stakeholders need to come on the round table discussion to look at the issues realistically, and then conduct a SWOT analysis. Also conduct a root cause analysis to check what's really has been going wrong, and how do we improvise in order to fill in the gaps so that we can move at least an inch in 2027. So gradually we continue to fill in those gaps, and we continue to kind of refurbish the system and review the performance always. And then we should have a monitoring system and tracking whereby we'll be providing feedback to the lawmakers, that is the National Assembly, making the findings and double checking and monitoring whether even if you conducted a review of the law, definitely there should be a mechanism for which we can still be reviewing and revisiting the system to ensure that what we are having is a kind of a way forward. We are moving from one inch to the other so that gradually we can perfect it. There is no perfect system in the world, and Nigeria's own cannot be different. But every human being, every responsible human being, every responsible institution, every responsible government, every responsible agency must have a system of checking and balancing, must have a system of conducting a SWOT analysis, and then conducting a root cause analysis to identify weaknesses, and then build up a systematic strategy towards a kind of filling in those gaps, and also making sure that the new mechanism will be something different. Because if you see what happens in Kogi, Bayelsa, and Imo State, there is kind of improvements in terms of how 2023 election was conducted, in terms of security, in terms of INEC preparedness. In fact, many people commended INEC for their performance, which means Why can't they look at those issues and double check why those things happened? If there are some that has been bringing, sabotaging the efforts, either within or outside, they should be brought to the book and then dealt with. So if you do that, it means you are doing that to serve as a deterrence for others to be careful. If it is the security cycle, you should do something. Look at the effort, the commitment of the Inspector General of Police, the commitment of all the security personnel from the conduct of the election in Imo, Kogi, and Bayelsa. And look at the conduct, the INEC itself, the process and the improvement compared to that of the 2023 general election. There is tremendous progress and improved performance in terms of release of the documents, the process, everything. So, which means INEC should go back to the drawing table and see why are they failing when it is general election, and why are we having these issues, and why do we continue to have huge gap that is leading to off-cycle election, which will never be good for the country, which will never help the system, which is not cost-effective. So, as far as I'm concerned, if all these mechanisms can be put in place, and we will have serious legislation process, we can easily review the law and then make sure that all those things are fixed, are put in place, and then fixed accordingly.
You know, it's interesting now because every time we are done with an election, whether it's off-cycle or the general election, we end up in courts. That costs to the country so much in terms of fund, in terms of time, manpower, man hours, as they call it, yes, and energy and so on and so forth. Most times when we conduct elections in this country, there's a shutdown of activities, commercial, social, and otherwise. Are elections not too expensive for Nigeria? Are we not spending too much prosecuting elections?
That is why I'm one of the people at the forefront making a clarion call and advocating that INEC and the legal framework should be reviewed. The legislators, the National Assembly and the Senate, they should sit down and work with all the stakeholders to review and cancel all these off-cycle elections.
How do we deal with that?
It is just a matter of adjustment in the law. If there is a procedure, that is the legal issue, which I cannot discuss because I'm not...
yes, you're not a lawyer, but we have the willpower to do that.
Well,
because you may have to now abridge the tenures of some governors.
That should be explained by the lawyers who can review, check the constitution.
In light of the law.
In light of the law. Because I'm not a legal lawyer, so I cannot discuss those things because I don't know anything about it. I don't know much about it. But as far as I'm concerned, there is nothing impossible. And if you can see, even the former president, Goodluck Ebele Jonathan, and among other elder statements, have made the same call. And because it's not really cost effective for Nigeria, and it's not really helping the system, and it will continue to create gaps. And probably as time goes on, leading parties will continue to create those opportunities in the areas where they saw their weaknesses very clear. Because APC have seen their weaknesses in Kano, because they wonder why they lost Kano. So if this process is to continue and Gowna is to be the governor, it's just a strategy, it's another strategy of making Kano to be out of off-cycle.
Are you saying in the case of Kano, the APC is being desperate?
Of course, indeed. It is very clear. If they are not being desperate, the governor, when the election was won, announced by INEC that Abba Kabir Yusuf have been returned elected. He went on media everywhere. He congratulated him, and he said that he took it in good faith, and he didn't go to the court. It is his party that went to the court.
Of course, I think that's in order because they say, politicians themselves also say that it is the party that owns the ticket, not the candidate.
But remember, even the national chairman of the party, Abdullahi Umar Ganduza, in the recent time, after the tribunal judgment, he made mention that they have upheld to the judgment and they are not
going to challenge it.
They are not going to challenge it. So I wonder why later they were challenging it. If they were not desperate, why are they making the U-turn?
In your assessment, do you think you talked about how that we need to review the law a while ago, and just to add to that, you mentioned former President Goodluck Jonathan, who also had advocated for a single tenure of 6 years. Do you think that will cuts down very drastically the desperation of politicians, especially those who have been elected into office?
Well, probably if tested. Because
we have to test it.
Yeah, we have to test it. We have to pilot it. Because President Goodluck Ebele Jonathan was one time a president, or 2 times a president, I can say. So, but I'm sure he must have gone through so many documents, and he must have gone through so many consultations, and must have gone through also reception of so many other stakeholders and other elder statesmen, probably that have been posing advices and advocating for something even while he was in office. But he was unable to put it into practice. So now as he left, he continued to see, probably that is one. And secondly, when he was in office, he never see it as an issue. Even though it might have been advocated by others, it might have been advised by others, it might have been a kind of a collective bargainance been made at a certain different fora of stakeholders. But he had not listened to it and give it a good attention. So now after leaving the office, going by the experiences he have had of monitoring election even in other countries, not only in Nigeria, and seeing vividly and very clear the cost of election process and the cost of wasting so much resources in the court, and looking at all this tribunal appeal and so on and so forth, and you can see that all the governors of Zamfara, Kano, Nasarawa and Plateau, all of them, they are not really concentrating. And for this period of time, how much have they collected in terms of the national allocation, the federal allocation? Right. How have they been utilizing it? Have they really been composed? Do they really have conformity and composity for them to sit down and concentrate and understand what are the needs and aspirations of their people? No. The answer is no. And no in capital letter, bold and italic. Why? Because their attention, they have divided attention. They are always between their state capital and the FCT. And even in the FCT, they are attending mostly discussions with lawyers, consultation with one and here and there. So if you look at how these 5 months or more than that have been wasted, and I'm sure in any state where you sack the governor, when the next person came in, he will definitely cancel all many legacies that have been initiated.
No matter how well intended.
No matter how well intended it may be. Even in the case of Kano State, and in the case of Nasarawa State, and the case of Plateau State, and in that of Zamfara State, definitely you can see how many people are being killed almost on a daily basis. Many different attacks and so on happening in Zamfara, but the governor is busy, working hard. Even though I'm not saying that he has not been doing anything attending to the security issues.
So what has he been busy doing from your assessment?
He's concentrating more on dealing with how to
secure his position.
So that, because definitely if he started anything, if his sacking became successful finally, when Mutawalli came back as a governor, he would definitely start from the zero level.
And so cancel out all the projects that the previous governor had put in place.
Of course, it has been a tradition. So
the country suffers, the state suffers.
The country suffers, the state suffers, and the larger population suffer. So it's only the political elites that benefit from it. Because at the end of it, both the opposition and the ruling party, they meet at a certain level. As a certain level as a cycle, and they work together harmoniously, and you see them laughing and chatting and marrying one another's daughter, marrying one another's son, without considering that this is APC, this is PDP, while me and you, the other people at the low level, the larger population, which are more than 98%, will be suffering and be insulting one another. So at the end of it, those who win and those who has been sacked will come back to the drawing table and continue the business as usual.
I'm going to ask you this very pointedly. Do you believe, from what you know, from what you have observed, from what you see, from the things you hear, from your experience overall, that there's a pretty good chance that some mischievous political elements are systematically and consistently destabilizing the judiciary to their favor?
That is absolute. There are so many evidences to prove that. There are so many reasons, even a layman at the village who have never been to school can understand. Because if you look at how Court of Appeal confiscated the mindset, the psychology and the psychology and the psycho of Nigerians, both educated and illiterate, having a rule of law, a judgment, with items, with only one page a paragraph, only one page. A judge that is expected to quote each and every part of the Constitution, that is, how many pages do we have in the Constitution? And that same judge confused himself and confused the nation and confused the judiciary and also destabilized the respect and also compromised the reputation, the respect that the judiciary earned before, and also compromised the respect and the reputation of himself and also the Court of Appeal. How can you say you have only 5 paragraphs on a page and you repeat 3 mistakes on the same page, and at the same time you cannot read it? Let me say one thing, Oye. You know, if this judgment was made under 4 things: 1, under duress; 2, under the circumstance whereby the entire population of Kano surrounded the court, maybe 80% are ready to burn the court if the judgment is not against them or to them. Or maybe you have the judge have his wife or a girlfriend, well dressed, with her makeup, a different makeup that he never see, that he will say that I am influenced by the beauty of my wife, or by the beauty of my girlfriend, or I am influenced because I am under duress, or I am influenced because I am afraid that I may be assassinated, or things like that. They conducted this judgment at their own comfort. A presentation was made, a reading was made, a review was made, and they have taken a number of days before they announced the judgment day, the day which they will read the judgment. So what have they been doing in between all that period? One pager. Even if I affect my signature and put my stamp of my company, for example, or affect my signature on any document, without reading it, who is responsible? So we are waiting to see how Supreme Court will will respond to it. Because you made mention paragraph A, paragraph B, paragraph C, paragraph D, paragraph E. And you affect your signature, you read it, you affect your signature and you put a stamp, and then after hours, you come back and say, no, there was a clerical mistake. Well, I really wonder, and I will be surprised, if really the judicial system of Nigeria is becoming an irresponsible system.
Talking about judiciary, let's talk about the Constitution. Senator Adeyeye once held up a copy of the Constitution on the floor of the Senate a few years ago, and he said, unless this Constitution is reviewed, I'm not quoting him, I'm paraphrasing, Nigeria will not know progress, Nigeria will not experience unity, Nigeria will not be able to win the war against insecurity, and it just, at least, just kept on going.
Well,
now, we've seen at the point, I mean, even Ike Ekweremadu, former deputy president of the Senate, had been the chairman of Constitutional Review Committee. So we've seen all of those efforts right from the Obasanjo days. Why is it hard, so difficult, almost impossible to review the Constitution?
Well, it is
in its entirety, not just in piecemeal.
It is not about reviewing the Constitution. It is
so is the Constitution okay as it is right now?
It is about reviewing the mindset of myself and you.
And leaving the Constitution the way it is.
Everybody. No, first of all, you know, we have not been working with the Constitution.
As it stands right now.
As it stands right now. So we have not really created an enabling environment to make the large population of the country to even understand what the Constitution is all about. But as far as I'm concerned, to the best of my understanding, based on some of the elements of the Constitution I have been reading, and also some of the review that have been conducted, constitutional review, law amendment of the law here and there, and all the issue of structuring the country or whatever. What I believe, sincerely and honestly, is that if we can come back to the operating system, it is the utilization, the implementation, operating the system. The system may not be perfect, but have we been able to even understand the system and put it into the use? That's the question. Do our leaders really understand what the Constitution is all about? Most of the people in the Senate, if you ask them many parts of the Constitution, they don't know. Most of the people you have at the National Assembly, most of them are ignorant of what the Constitution is talking about. And they are the lawmakers. So how can you be making a law on the people that you don't even understand who they are? So as far as I'm concerned, we should find a way of, first of all, understanding the Constitution itself. Then we can be able to define and identify the substances and the areas where there is need to make a review. You understand? Even those who were invited to have the constitutional review that was conducted during Abacha regime, the constitutional review that was conducted, I think during Goodluck Ebele Jonathan or thereby.
That was actually the national conference, the confab of 2014.
Yes, but it also have a review of the Constitution itself.
As part of the elements.
As part of the elements.
Right.
So, but the question is, those who have been engaged as members of that constitutional review or the confab, how many percentage do you have of those who really know and understand what really the Constitution is all about? How many of them have been able to place their eyes from first page to the last page of the Constitution, even proofreading it once in their life? How many of them? And how many of them been able to look inward and understand each segment and each chapter and each subsection of the Constitution? So you have to, first of all, make people understand and know what really the Constitution is all about. From what I have understand, from my own point of view, our foreparents cannot place something in totality to be wrong. Definitely we are wrong because we are not ready to read through, understand it, and then put it into practice. If we are really putting it into practice, many of those allegations against corrupt practices and all other, errant institutions like ICPC, EFCC, and others wouldn't have been emerged, because we will have had a system, we will have a system that have been checking the process. So you wouldn't have even take yourself into having a law to enact EFCC and ICPC. As far as I'm concerned, we should go back and study and understand the Constitution itself. And then we also review our differences. Because our major problem, as far as I'm concerned, is the fact that we are trying to forcefully say, let's forget our differences and have unity and peace, which will never happen.
Why won't that happen?
We forget our differences? No. It is only when I and you understood our differences. When you understand what I really like and what I mean, and what you really like and what you mean, we understand our differences. Then we can
not to forget about our differences.
Not to forget about our differences. As far as we continue to say, let's forget about our differences, we will never move an inch. We will continue to have conflict. We will continue to have insecurity. We will continue to have armed robbery. We will continue to have one chance. We will continue to have leaders without focus. We will continue to have leaders who are not sincere and not honest and don't really even understand why they are sitting on their seats. Most of the problems that we have is misplacement of priority and then placing leaders on a seat they don't really deserve. I'm not saying that they don't deserve based on qualification. I'm not saying that they doesn't deserve it based on education. I'm not saying they doesn't deserve it based on religion. But they doesn't deserve it because they don't even understand why they are on that seat. That is why we are having so many confusion in the country, and that is why we are having a desperate politicians, and that is why we are having a very poor and our judicial system becoming a bit kind of confusion, confiscating and creating chaos into the psychology of Nigerians. So Nigerians are really losing confidence and trust on the judiciary. So Nigerians are losing confidence and trust on the leadership, on the executive. Nigerians are losing trust and confidence on the legislative arm of government, which means something is wrong somewhere. And the process for which we recruit leaders is also rotten, right from the party leadership itself, the INEC, the quality of the INEC input and output and result, and also the individuals, myself and you and many of us, whereby you find a Nigerian will say they will put a leaf on his head and say that I'm for sale. So you know, when you look at all these things, are we really in our sense? So do we really have this ingredient in the available constitution that we have now? So as far as I'm concerned, we doesn't even understand the constitution itself.
So our concern should not be whether to review the constitution or not. It should be whether we actually understand.
It should be,
yes, the items in the constitution.
Understanding the constitution. It is, you cannot just, when I give you a book, Mr. Uyi, please read this book and get back and give me a feedback in a summary, maybe in a 1-pager or 10-page. It's a 500-page I give you. Please go and study it. I am the permanent secretary, for example. You are one of the directors. So a document is brought from another institution that wanted to have a deal with our own institution. I may not be able to go through it, but you, as head of department or whatever, I gave you that book. Go and study it. When you go to your shelf, you just put it in the counter, and then you keep looking at it. So when I call you, what are you going to tell me? What will be the answer? When I call you after 2 weeks or after 10 months or after 10 years, what will be the answer? The book is only there in your shelf, but you have not been able to read through. And even if you read, you proofread it once, it may not give you the ingredient I need. We may not be able to have the right deal with those people coming from the outside, those who brought the book. Yes, of course, the book concerns us, but have we been able to glance and read through and proofread it and understand it? You know, you cannot have just somebody outside from the psychiatric. Immediately as come out from the psychiatric, you take him to the church and say, let him be the pastor. You cannot pick somebody from the psychiatric after getting refreshed, released. You say, let him go and be the imam of the mosque. Definitely he need to go through manuscripts. He need to study and understand. So if you really understand your religion, if you are not a pastor, and you don't go through Bibles every now and then, and if you are not a scholar, Islamic scholar, and you don't read Quran and other Islamic manuscripts every now and then, can you invite somebody, a layman from the street, who is a wheelbarrow, a wheel pusher? Or let's just take, for example, even here in the studio, can you bring somebody who is dealing with the camera to ask him to come and deal with the program? Unless and until you taught him what the program is all about, and likewise, you that you are conducting a program, you cannot handle camera unless you are trained about it. So, as far as I'm concerned, we Nigerians and our leaders, we need to go back to study this constitution. Out of every 1,000 graduates, you hardly find 7 that can read the Nigerian constitution and give you an answer of 10 over 100 questions that you may ask about it. So what of the illiterates? And out of almost all the leaders that we have in the country, out of all the senators, 93, whatever number we have, and the members of the National Assembly, most of them, if you go to more than 80% of them, don't even know what, some of them have not even seen the constitution itself as a material. Or probably they have it in their shelf that when they came as members of the National Assembly during the swearing in, they have been given. But they went somewhere and packed it in the cupboard, and they never look at it. So if they want to make any reference, they engage lawyers. They engage other legal laureates. You're supposed to study, you're supposed to understand. We cannot continue to shout on constitution review. Which constitution are we reviewing? The constitution that we don't even know? The constitution that we don't even read? The constitution that we don't even understand? Most of these guys, the political elites, most of them, they don't even have good knowledge of the electioneering process. I want to tell you that I have so many evidences to prove this, because I have been participating in the election monitoring, and I have been reading through the election guidelines. And whenever you have the politicians, the contenders, either the local government chairman, the members of the State Assembly, National Assembly, or senators. When you are making a presentation, you are making argument on the election guidelines. Most of them, they became mumu. They don't even know it. They never glance at it. They would even be asking you, give me that book, let me look at it. You wanted to contest for a gubernatorial election, you wanted to contest for a National Assembly or State Assembly, and you never ask the electoral officer to have the guideline, you never go through it, and you still have, how do you expect us to have a correct process? And you conduct a training for presiding officers of 3-4 hours, and even for 3-4 hours, not really at the right convenience, you did not create a comfort zone, and you expect to have the correct election, and you also have courts misruling, misguiding, and confusing the nation because of so many allegations of bribe. A lot of money is flying around here and there, and you expect to have a perfect judicial system. You hardly find it. That is why, if you want to go to court, even at the low court, at the down level, you must be ready with something in your pocket. So if this cannot be changed in the psychology and mindset of Nigerians, we will never move an inch. And there will never be peace in Nigeria. There will never be security in Nigeria. There will continue to be boggling and corruption.
Until we address these issues.
Of course, until we address
I'd like to say a whole lot of thank you to you, Dr. Yahuza Getso, development expert, for coming to share with us on the program this morning.
Thank you very much for having me.
We do appreciate it. And that's our program for you. I'm Uyag Mofwegwe. Thank you for watching. Our correspondent Sharon Ajay here at Global Television has a special report that takes a look at the Ajaokuta Steel Mill, the biggest in the country, what the federal government says it has done and continues to do with that investment, and how it will impact Nigeria going forward, including the potential of creating 500,000 jobs.
A cross-section of Nigerians has reacted to the announcement by the Minister of Mines and Steel Development, Prince Shaibu Audu, assuring of the federal government's commitment to complete the Ajaokuta Steel Construction Project, which is said to have the potential of creating 500,000 jobs for Nigerians. Nigerians have aired their views concerning the issue of the ongoing Ajaokuta Steel Construction Project. For a steel complex that has been comatose for decades, many Nigerians are full of expectations, and it serves as a test of government resolve. However, Edward, for instance, does not find the story particularly inspiring.
We've heard so much about Ajaokuta Steel, and it's like at a point we're beginning to lose hope. But because hope is the essence of life, we believe that this government, or whatever successive government, should do something about it. But Nigeria needs it. And Nigeria is more important than anybody. So we are believing that because of humanity, we need it. We can't continue to be stagnant. We need to move forward.
Robert, on the other hand, expresses optimism and advises Nigerians to keep hope alive while constantly believing in and supporting the government.
The time has come for us to actually believe in the words of Mr. President. You understand, he's a pragmatic person. He's focused, and he has direction. And he has armed himself with technocrats. And I believe so much in the words of the Honorable Minister, who is a representative of the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And also, you have a permanent secretary, you understand, in that ministry that is a technocrat. And I believe that they will swing into action very soon.
For Wasil Awar, a civil servant, more commitment to the Ajaokuta Steel Complex is expected of the government, considering the need to industrialize Nigeria in order to encourage local production.
We have the natural deposit of this steel in Nigeria, so it cannot just be wasted, it cannot be moribund. If the other subsequent previous administration have been coming, they are making lips emphasis on it. But I think he is more pragmatic on it, as he laid emphasis on it now. But you have to realize that the Ajaokuta Steel is not going to start from embryo. It has gotten to a stage before it was moribund. So now what he's going to do now is to resuscitate it. So by resuscitating it, all the manpower needed, the capacity and capability needed, he knows them. Just to ask them to come back. And once it is top on his agenda, So if it's top of on his agenda, it's going to lay emphasis on it, and the thing will be prosecuted.
Sharon Ajay reporting for Global TV News.
Welcome to Global Morning.
The death toll from flooding.
Most time our politicians just bring in policies too, for sure.
Incidentally, we have several more stories.
The legislature was carefully crafted to
22.2% inflation rates as of April this year. What does that say about where we are as a country?
I think Nigeria has resorted to being resilient.
Before you call a police station, before they even leave, they'll take permission from
I don't think there's really anything on ground to improve.
The struggle as to strike.
The Minister of Education volunteered and said, give me 2 weeks.
It was a lie. The president never gave me any deadline.